Now we will see tools and indicators for monitoring environmental conditions. Teachers are assistant professors and professors of Aix-Marseille University. What is an indicator? Biotic indicators, which reflect the quality of the environment, are extensively used in the marine realm, especially in the context of European directives, but also for impact studies, to assess the quality of a water body, to indicate the respective weighting of processes such as current sedimentation and climate under natural and anthropogenic forcing, and to monitor the status of species of interest, whether emblematic species, indicators of ecosystem health, or indicators of pollution.
Macroorganism indicators. Macroorganisms found in the ocean, as well as in fresh waters, can be considered as indicators of the health of the ocean. Safety indicators in the ocean are linked with the presence of pathogen or toxic microorganisms or metals in the water column and the sediments. They can constitute a health risk for humans when swimming in the ocean or consuming shellfish or fish containing those microorganisms or metals. Therefore, the safety quality of an environment will have an impact on coastal activities. Among those microorganisms, bacteria can be used as indicator of fecal contamination. In the ocean, over 2,000 species of bacteria have been reported. In order to determine the presence of bacteria in a given ecosystem, cultures of bacteria are done in the lab. Non-pathogenic and pathogenic can occur together, but pathogenic ones are often less abundant than the good ones. This culture technique is low cost and quick, following the presence of two fecal bacteria, such as Escherichia coli and Enterococcus, allowed for a quick assessment of the safe quality of the waters. Delays are about 36 hours between collection and detection, but new molecular technique will reduce this delay considerably to about 3 hours. Other microorganisms of concerns are various, although it is not clear if they should be considered as proper organisms. Their numbers vary in a wide range. They are difficult to detect, and so far they have not been linked with any specific indicator of health issues. According to the current European legislation, contamination by fecal matter through wastewater release are detected by the presence of the bacteria mentioned above, and their concentrations should remain below specific level as stated by the Directive 2006-7-EC regarding the management of bathing waters. That directive gives requirement for shellfish farming waters for toxic metal and bacteria maximal levels. Phytoplankton are photosynthetic organisms responsible for about half of the oxygen on the planet, but they can also be toxic for marine organisms as well as humans. In order to follow potentially toxic species, observation under microscope during favorable seasons are performed, especially near shellfish collection areas or farming. For each species, a specific concentration of cells as well as the concentration of toxin are measured using chemical tools. Legislation is country-specific, but harmful phytoplankton surveys have been put in place in several countries. What about changes happening in the pelagic ecosystem? Monitoring of environmental conditions at several stations along the French coast has been done since 1995, and the implementation of the SOBLIT, the Observation Service of Coastal Areas, has been done at 10 sampling stations, which are sampled every other week, with 3 stations in the Med Sea and 7 in the Atlantic Channel and North Sea regions. Physical, such as temperature, and chemical, as salinity and nutrients parameters, are measured, as well as phytoplankton concentration, and in a few places, zooplankton abundance and diversity. Zooplankton biomass abundance diversity in terms of functional or taxonomic groups can give insight in the quality of the ecosystem with several indicator species. Long-term series, such as this one, can be effective tools to detect ecosystem viability and possible regime shift. If we look at the Mediterranean Sea, several zooplankton species are considered indicator species, as they are carried around by the currents. The siphonophore Physalia physalis is carried into the Med Sea through the Gibraltar Strait by the Atlantic waters, entering in the surface. Another cnidarian species, Pelagia noctiluca, is a good indicator of the intrusion of the North Current over the shelf, especially around the Bay of Marseille. Other species can be indicators of eutrophic or disturbed environment, such as those 2 species of copepods, Acacia tosa and Acacia clausi. The first one are dominating in ecosystems strongly altered. Other species have seen their spatial distribution strongly impacted by global warming, their range of dispersion being reduced to the northern sector of the western basin of the Med Sea. That's the case of Calanus gollandicis. Eventually, they will disappear from the Med Sea following the continuous increase in temperature.
Thanks to the European Union, there is an increase of indicator in the frame of the Water Framework Directive, because member states have to assess the ecological quality of the coastal water bodies. For the Mediterranean Sea, there are 4 biological quality elements which have been developed. One for Posidonia, one for phytoplankton, one for the fauna of the soft sediments, and the one which is interesting us is macroalgae. So each water body has to reach a good state in 2021. So I will show you the most used and powerful tool, the Carlin method, which has been applied for the European countries in Spain, France, Monaco, Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, Malta, and outside the EU, Algeria, Montenegro, Albania, and Lebanon. So in France, the littoral has been divided in 47 water bodies, and 40 has been evaluated by Carlit, which is around 3,000 kilometers. So the Carlit method is the assessment of the algal communities of the littoral fringe. In this fringe, we can find around 20 communities, which each has a different sensitivity level, which is the level of resistance to pollution, and so we map each of these communities. So the work in situ with a small boat very close to the shore, we are going slowly, and we are mapping with maps and redrawing the communities all around the shore, and we are putting all these things in a GIS to calculate an EQR, and thanks to the EQR we can assess each water body with the ecological status as defined by the Water Framework Directive, which is very good, good, moderate, poor, and bad. The result for France is this one. So as you can see, most of the water bodies are in blue and green, which means that most of the water bodies are in a very good shape. Few are moderate, and just 2 are in bad state.
Marine protected areas are probably the most efficient methods of sustainable marine management in areas where they are reserved by law, and especially if they are effective in the field with allocated means of control. Marine protected areas are defined as any area of intertidal or subtidal terrain, together with its overlying water and associated flora, fauna, historical and cultural features, which has been reserved by law or other effective means to protect part of all of the enclosed environment. One may think that human activities are prohibited from these areas, but this is not the case. On the contrary, protected areas need to be part of the broader regional approach to land and sea management, a flexible approach in which local people should not be excluded a priori. Human activities are part of the management of these marine protected areas, and most of the objectives of these areas are related to the good management of multiple marine human activities, at the same time with the valorization of the natural heritage of these marine ecosystems. The main objective of the marine protected areas are to preserve species and ecosystems, because species alone cannot be maintained if their habitat, environmental parameters, and the other species which interact with them in the ecosystem are not maintained in a good state. Also to maintain undisturbed areas for environmental education, to dispose of controlled areas for scientific research, to keep preserved areas for underwater tourism, as these areas attract tourists and are beneficial for the local economy, to rebuild population of overexploited species for rational exploitation within the boundaries of the marine protected areas or adjacent areas, and finally, to make users compatible with each other and with conservation objectives that we call sustainable management, and taking into account in the same time economical, socio-cultural, and also environmental issues for the common interest of humans and marine species and their future generations. The managers of marine protected areas are supposed to manage the conflicts between the various users in marine environment, the professional fishermen, but also the recreational fishermen, the pleasure boating, and the scuba divers, and to preserve this natural inheritance in the natural ecosystems. Their decisions are often based on scientific works, and they benefit from the advice of the marine researchers who study the evolution of these marine ecosystems under the influence of these multiple human activities. You may see here some examples of negative interactions between these users. Boat anchors can disseminate invasive species such as Colerpa cineratea or Colerpa taxifolia, which can affect the diversity and the functioning of marine ecosystems. They may also have a mechanical impact by the anchorage on key fragile ecosystems such as Posidonia meadows, Coralligenus, that can be torn off, broken, that have a very slow growth, and they will take a long time to rebuild, and on which depend many other associated marine organisms. Recreational fishing may locally represent a serious competitor to professional fishermen for the fish stock exploitation. And from the security point of view, pleasure boats or fisherman boats may represent a risk for scuba divers. Marine protected areas has thus a highly important role of management of these potential users' conflicts to preserve the natural heritage and to make sustainable all these activities on a shared area. Scientific research will have a positive effect and benefit to this management. Marine protected areas management will thus concern all activities, professional and recreational fishing, boating and diving, and a good management will allow to preserve the ecosystems, which will benefit to all users. In terms of professional fisheries, it may also increase fish stocks, fish individual size, allow a balanced demographic of fish species, spillover effects, and even increase the fish stocks below the reserve area and finally ensure what we call the reserve effect. Compared to a usual fishing area, in a marine protected area, and particularly in some reduced area that we call no-take areas, where fisheries are forbidden and they are generally reduced compared to the total marine protected area globally. They represent about 2% of the Mediterranean marine protected areas. So in these areas, we will observe an increasing biomass for exploited species and even a spillover effect that is an export of this biomass far away the limits of these areas and even farther the limits of the marine protected area in the surrounding area exploited by fisheries. Compared to a usual fishing area, in a marine protected area, and particularly in no-take areas, we will notice an increasing species diversity, increasing frequency of rare species, and reestablishment of disappeared or vulnerable species such as Pinipedus marginatus, here in a photo taken in Porquerolles National Reserve in France, where this species slowly recovered after almost disappearing because of spear fishing. Compared to a usual fishing area, in a marine protected area, and particularly in no-take areas, we will notice an increasing individual mean total length as fisheries select in priority large-sized individuals. This selection is made by the mesh of nets and hook size, and in fishing area, the mean individual size is rather low. We may also notice sometimes in fisheries overexploited areas a genetic drift with a loss of large-sized reproducers, and individuals are reproducing at smaller and smaller sizes. Compared to a usual fishing area, in a marine protected area, and particularly in no-take areas, we will notice an equilibrated demography with the presence of all ages, recruits, young, adults, old, and very old individuals in equilibrated proportion. In a fishing area, we generally may observe many recruits and young individuals, and a few adults, while old and very old individuals are never seen in these areas, as these large-sized individuals are captured before getting to this age. Compared to a usual fishing area in a marine protected area, and particularly in no-take areas, we will notice an equilibrated sex ratio, which is the report between the number of males and females. In fishing area, this report is generally disequilibrated in the favor of males or of females. According to species, males and females may have different spatial distributions or grow more or less quickly, or even change sex when arriving to a certain age or size, and thus be captured by fisheries differentially. However, maintaining an equilibrated sex ratio is essential to allow good conditions for reproduction for maintenance of stocks and species.
Ecosystemic indicator. We will see an example of an ecosystemic approach to build an ecosystemic indicator based on the consideration of many essential functional groups in the maintenance of an ecosystem. The Ecosystem-Based Quality Index, EBQI, was developed to assess to the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. A key point of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive is based on the ecosystem-wide evaluation of the good environmental status in order to ensure that the marine environment is at a level that allows uses, exploitations, and activities by current and future generation. The question is, does an index based on the health of a single species give information about the health of the entire ecosystem to which it belongs, even if it is a key species or an ecosystem engineer? Of course not. One species or a group of species can only target information or answers to specific questions, like effect of climate change on Gorgonian or the consequences of a contribution of fine particles on Corallinaceae. Coralligenous is a complex habitat built by biotic constructors. Its functioning is based on interactions between multiple functional groups like teleostean, bioherders, filter and suspension feeders, grazers, etc. For the ecosystemic approach, we include 10 functional compartments. The first step is to design a simplified conceptual models of the functioning of the ecosystem. In this figure, you see 10 functional compartments with number before the name. It is once to be evaluated in this approach. Second step is to balance the compartments according to their relative weight in the ecosystem functioning according to the expert judgment, from 5 for highest weight to 1 lowest weight. The third step is the quantifying. For each ecosystem compartment, a set of relevant parameters according to expert judgment was chosen and assessed through a semi-quantitative scale, from 0 for very bad status to 4 for a very good ecological status. The score of all compartments were added up. This sum gave the final mark of the ecosystem status, that is to say, the ecosystem-based quality index, at a given site. For practical purpose, the EBQI was converted to a scale from 0 for the worst quality to 10 for the best quality. The last step is the calculation of confidence index of a BQI. For each compartment status, a confidence index is proposed. The confidence index is evaluated through a semi-quantitative scale from 0 for no quantitative field data and no stable expert judgment to the best mark, equal to 4 for field data available, recent and suitable, obtained with the recommended methods. The confidence index of the BQI, which ranged between 0 to 10, was obtained by this equation, that is to say, the sum of the confidence index for each compartment. The objective of the confidence index is to reliable the evaluation according to the methodology used. For example, the evaluation is less reliable if the data come from expert judgment instead of field measurements. In conclusion, we can say that the use of indicators for the evaluation of the environmental status is essential. In order to use the right indicator, we have to clearly define the question we want to answer, but also take into account available human and financial resources.